presentation. Okay. So, yeah, the title of the presentation is a comparative look at the aggregated route assignment problem in road traffic and public transit. So we are looking at the problem of route assignment, assign routes for the users um, traveling on road, urban roads or public transit. And we are comparing the problem in these two contexts, and we'll see what we mean by aggregated in a minute. So this presentation is based on my work with Professor Christian Cortez, Professor Pablo Rey, and Dr. Ricardo de la Paz on road traffic. That is one work, and the second work it is based on is on public transit with Professor Alejandro Terracini and Professor Christian Cortez. So yeah, everyone except Professor Pablo Rey is from Department of Civil Engineering, and Professor Rey is from Universidad Tecnológica Metropolitana. So basically, yeah, the second work is on network design actually, but it uses an assignment model as one of its components. So it was interesting to see this assignment problem in these two contexts where there are some key differences, but they are similar in a broad sense. So it was interesting to look at those key differences and see how if it can be generalized for other problems. So okay, first the route assignment problem. We are given a network, a road traffic network or a transit network, and we have an origin destination matrix, and we want to assign routes for the demands based on some pre-specified criterion. So we'll talk about what those criteria could be. So in the present framework, a route does not simply mean a sequence of links from the user's origin to destination. It could have other types of choices like mode choice, or in a discrete time setting, we could also incorporate departure time choice. So basically, the idea is to um, have have any type of choice, have any type of choice that can be defined over a finite set of alternatives and can be represented in this simple form, right? Um, yeah, like for example, mode choice, you could have a private car or public transport or some other mode, walking. So these are discrete number and discrete and finite. Similarly, in a discrete time setting, departure time choice is also finite. So yeah, we could incorporate every type of choice that can be uh, represented in this form. So okay, the solution algorithm in a broad way, all of the most of the solution algorithms at least can have this outline, but the details vary widely for the different algorithms. But this outline at least gives us the highlights the elements, different elements involved. So we have the inputs, which include the network and demands and other flow or cost computation parameters, and we have the choices, uh, which we just discussed. Choices, any type of choice that has this form. And now we perform network loading, which is basically the output of this step is flows on the links. And then we compute costs. And then using those costs, we update the choices, and then we iterate until convergence in some sense. So yeah, these are the different elements involved, but the details vary depending on the problem setting. And okay, most of the problems can be represented in this with this complementarity formulation. There are exceptions, but this generally this formulation can be used for a lot of the root assignment problems. So we won't use this notation elsewhere in the presentation, but I'm just showing this to see how simple this can be represented. But the thing is, this C small h, C subscripted by small h, this is doing a lot of heavy lifting. This is a function of choice variables that is doing the flow and cost computation. So all of this, dashed line box, all of this is represented in the simple functional form. So with that, we have this neat two e- basically two equations that represent the whole problem. Um, yeah. Okay. Okay. Firstly, what sort of aggregation are we looking at? The idea is to prioritize scalability over level of detail, because we are looking at problems that need to be applied at a large scale city level, right? So we may not need all of the minute details, like how the vehicle is accelerating or decelerating. So we just use aggregated kind of measures, models, and even inputs. So for example, in practice, we can aggregate different elements, like aggregation of flow models, right? I mean, aggregation of vehicles. um, for example, with road traffic, we use a macroscopic traffic flow model that evolves at condition on the network in terms of average flows, densities, and speeds. So in transit, uh, we may use some simplifying assumptions on the headways. Um, and coming to the aggregation of network, we spatially aggregate the demands so that we can distribute them over a small set of origins and destinations. Um, like, yeah, we can increase the number of origins and destinations, but that would increase the computational time. So we, depending on our application, we can decide what those origins and destinations can be. So coming to the aggregation of population, so the differences in the personal characteristics affecting the choices can only be represented by a small number of user classes at best. Because if take, for example, the value of time, right? This is presumably continuously distributed, right, for across the population. But we can't use continuous distributed value of time for with our models, because we'll see a figure later. This would actually increase the computational time exponentially. So the best we can do is to discretize it and use a small number of user classes. So yeah, at every level we can, for example, in the first level with the aggregation of vehicles or flow models, we can use models that are more sophisticated, that increases the level of detail. Or with the aggregation of network, we can add more and more origins and destinations. And aggregation of population, we can add more number of user classes. So we can increase the detail, but the idea is like we have to decide based on our application, right? So yeah, the limitation is that if we increase too much, we have to spend more computational resources. So yeah, we have that balance. Okay, coming to the differences in road traffic and public transit, at least in terms of modeling. So consider a choice, a simple choice that you make in a road traffic context, right? You arrive at a junction and you want to decide which link to take further. So you can decide on one link and you can take that. But coming to public transit, you can we can decide on a line, right? We can, for example, go to a metro station, and uh, maybe a bus transit would be more appropriate for this model. Yeah, let's say we go to a bus stop and we say we'll take this bus. But when we arrive there, that bus might be there, it might not be there. So we may be better off, depending on the frequency of that bus line, we may be better off choosing a different line if it arrives first. So we basically, in public transit context, we choose a subset of lines. Not We can't just choose a single line. We can do it, but the wait time may be longer. So we might be better off choosing a subset of lines which are arrives first. We can board that. So this aspect is a kind of source of computational complexity in transit assignment problems. Like, number of possible subsets is 2 power n minus 1, right? 2 power n minus 1. N is the number of available lines. Minus 1 is we have to choose. We can't choose the empty subset. So that's a reason for minus 1. But yeah, that is increasing exponentially in terms of these available lines. So yeah, that is a source of computational complexity in public transit, which isn't there in road traffic. We at most have like 3 or 4 links at any junction. So yeah, that is the number of choices we have there. So in addition to that, in a public transit context, we also have to choose where to alight, right? We can board a bus and it stops at multiple places. So we have to choose where to alight. That is not the case with road traffic. If we choose a link, we will go to the next junction. So we can choose depending on the type of model we're looking at. We can again choose which link to take from the next junction. But that is not the case with public transit. Once we board it, we have a different type of choice to make, which is whether to alight or continue on the bus. So yeah, so there is no analogous choice type in road traffic. Um, so if we combine these 2 types of choices in public transit, alighting choice and boarding choice will have a huge computational complexity. So there are different types of models that use different ways to incorporate these 2 choices. That's where they differ. So yeah. Okay, coming to the third difference. On a road path, it can be composed of several links, right? A road, it can be very long in terms of the number of links, but that is not the case with public transit. uh, for the passengers have some cognitive limits to how they decide on their route, right? They can at most have 2 or 3 stops. um, they can't it's hard to figure out a route beyond that. So yeah, but that is not the case with road traffic. We can just have a sense of direction. Okay, this is the direction in which I want to go, and you can go in that direction, and you can find some road that seems to be not free flowing, that takes you in that direction. I can just choose that. So that is another difference. Like, the effect is, if we draw a path tree in these 2 contexts, in the first case, in the road traffic case, the path, in a sense, that it is narrower and it has more number of levels. But in public transit case, it is broader and it has fewer levels. Fewer levels because fewer number of transfers, broader because of this exponentiation, right? But that is not the case with road traffic. It is narrower because at any junction we can choose among 2 or 3 links, uh, but the overall path can be longer because you may need to make that choice at multiple junctions. So there are, depending on the network size, it could be very long. So this is interesting because path enumeration, that is a huge thing in this whole assignment literature. So if the path tree has this property, has these differences in these 2 contexts, then it is very important. Indeed, we can limit the number of transfers in a public transit context, and then solve the problem in a way that we can't do in road traffic. We'll talk about that in a minute, but this is a crucial difference. Okay, I just want to look at other dimensions in which this route assignment problem can differ. So one is path-based versus node-based. In a path-based context, we choose the entire path. I mean, as I said, path doesn't just mean the actual physical path or a sequence of links. Uh, Depending on the types of choices you consider, it could incorporate much broader type of path. So yeah, in a path-based model, we choose the entire path from you know from the point of entry of the user into the network to their exit. But in a node-based model, we make decisions sequentially, right? So computationally, the second approach uh, is better, because we don't have to enumerate paths. Generally, what happens is in path-based models, we enumerate a set of shortest paths, like first 5 shortest paths or something, and we try to assign demands over those 5 paths, which are determined at the beginning of the algorithm, right? So the eventual solution could be suboptimal. But with a node-based model, that need not be the case. We can figure out the exact solution algorithm depending on the, in some cases it might not converge. I mean, yeah, I'll get back to that in a minute. But in some cases, it might not converge. It will have this fluctuation, but we can still identify the solution. But yeah, with that, despite that exception, node-based models generally give us, the right kind of solution. In path-based models, it may be more suboptimal. So basically, yeah, the reason this is the case in node-based models is that we have this Markovian assumption at any point in the network where the users have to make a decision. They can disregard their uh, paths they have taken until that point, right? It doesn't matter where they have come from. What matters is where they're going. So we can just simply aggregate users based on the destinations and make the choices. So that is a Markovian assumption. That is the reason we have this advantage, computational advantage in node-based models. Okay, so but however, there's one problem with node-based models. In some cases, it might give us some unreasonable paths, like a user can go from point A to point B, and then from at point B, they can forget that they have just come from point A and then go back to point A. It doesn't happen in some problems, like user equivalent problem, which we'll talk about it. But yeah, it doesn't happen in user equivalent problem. But in a stochastic user equivalent problem, that is an issue. So that is the main source of differences in models with stochastic problems. So yeah, there could be these unreasonable paths with node-based models. So also with the experiments that I've done here, it seems like path-based models seem to be converging a bit faster than node-based models. It might be because in path-based models, the number of variables we're optimizing over are fewer because we have just selected a couple of paths. But let's say we're looking at a network of the one I'm working with is of moderate sized network of like 8 junctions. So the number of paths in that if I'm applying a path-based model, the number of paths I would choose for each origin destination is like 3. So it seems like in a node-based model, the number of choices would be number of variables would be higher. So it seems like because of that, path-based models seem to be converging faster. But this needs to be confirmed with experiments performed on larger size networks. So yeah, 2 crucial differences. One is path-based models could be suboptimal, but they might be converging faster. Node-based models give us optimal solutions, but they might be a bit slower. So yeah, okay, there we have these 2 categories of models, but in reality, users seem to be making decisions based on some this notion of anchor points and anchor links. But the problem is we need to figure out what those anchor points and anchor links are. So in some studies, they use the notion of efficient links. So under a free flow condition, assume that there's no traffic on the road. If a given link takes you closer to the destination in terms of the free flow travel time, then that is an efficient link. If it goes in the other direction, uh, it is not an efficient link. So basically, this notion, it is kind of independent of the congestion level. It is independent of the demand. It is independent of the congestion. So we might be eliminating a lot of valid paths. Once there is congestion, uh, uh, a, an inefficient link in terms of free flow time could become a valid choice to make under congestion. So that such paths are not um, allowed with this approach. So that is where we're actually working on to dynamically determine these efficient links. So the problem there is, if we change from one iteration to iteration, the next iteration, if we change the number of links, like the set of efficient links, then it would have some instability. So how to tackle that? That is the challenge. So we have the idea, but we need to perform experiments and see if, how fast this converges and how better the solutions are. But yeah, anyway, so then another dimension that these models could vary is dynamic versus static, depending on whether we are considering the time dimension or not. Right. So basically, uh, yeah, the static models have, in traffic assignment problem context at least, they have very nice mathematical programming formulations. We have such formulations for different types of models, like user equilibrium, system optimum, and stochastic user equilibrium. These three models, we'll talk about that in a minute. But all of these have some nice mathematical programming formulations. But for transit case, hyperpaths make that difficult. Hyperpaths, that is the strategies. Like, say we're choosing a set of lines, right? So yeah, whichever comes first, we board that. So that notion makes it difficult to have this nice mathematical programming formulation. However, in a static case, uh, in the static traffic assignment case, um, if at all there is a cycle, then a tiny bit of flow, like smaller and smaller flow, would be flowing infinitely. Some portion of traffic could have infinitely long paths because they are following a cycle, and we are not considering time dimension. So it kind of mathematically, it becomes a kind of a matrix inversion uh, involved there. But that need not be the case with transit, because with transit we can fix a number of transfers. We can say that passengers can make at most 2 or 3 transfers. We can fix that, so we don't have to deal with infinitely long paths like in the traffic case. So that is the difference. So on the one hand, we have this difficulty because of the hyperpaths. On the other hand, we have an advantage because of this restriction on the number of transfers in transit. So yeah, okay. Also, in traffic problems, the literature is very mature. In static assignment literature in traffic context is very mature. We have different types of approaches: link-based, path-based, bush-based models. Um, yeah, bush-based is basically um, they try to avoid cycles using a cyclic tree. So, okay, we have this literature. In dynamic problems, we can just use straightforward simulation. That is not the case with static, because of these infinite paths. But with static, with dynamic problems, since we have a finite amount of time that we are simulating, we don't have infinite paths any longer. So we can just simulate it. But it could still have cycles. Like at one, maybe a vehicle exits this junction at one point, but it could come back to the same junction at a later time. So that is again a cycle. But still, we can show that at least as long as we satisfy this first in first out principle in our traffic flow model, we can show that in a user equilibrium problem, we won't have any cycles. So okay, user equilibrium, that is a behavioral principle. um, for, like, in the beginning we mentioned, right, the problem is to assign routes to the demand based on some pre-specified criterion. User equilibrium is one of those criterion, and which seems to be a realistic kind of criterion. It states that an alternative can only be chosen by some user if it minimizes their expected travel cost. Right. This is the principle for deterministic user equilibrium problem. We have alternatively we have system optimum problem, which minimizes the overall travel cost. Right. The system optimum problem was originally it was mainly considered in the uh, for earlier traffic assignment papers, uh, presumably because it was easier to have some mathematical programming formulations for system optimum problem than user equilibrium problem. But it is still important because it has some interest in a very interesting applications like network design and others. So yeah, also in terms of model representation, like the same complementarity formulation that I've shown you earlier, we can give for both of these. For the user equilibrium problem, we just use average travel costs. For system optimum, we use marginal cost. So we have the same complementarity formulation for both the problems. But users cannot calculate, like they have to mentally calculate the cost, right, to figure out the route. They don't do that with perfect accuracy. So we need to add some noise to their perceptions. So that gives us the stochastic user equilibrium problem. The idea is that a user chooses a path that minimizes their perceived travel cost. So if the noise that we add, if we assume Gumbel distribution for that noise, we have a multinomial stochastic user equilibrium problem, which has some nice mathematical formula for the perceived travel costs. That is not the case with other distributions. Like if we assume normal distribution, we don't have a closed form formula anymore. So with Gumbel distribution, we do. So with the perceived travel cost, we can again use the same complementarity formulation for this. So basically, once we have the complementarity formulation for user equilibrium problem or system optimum problem or stochastic user equilibrium problem, we can use the same algorithm. I am actually using the same like algorithm in my case. Like the idea is with this assumption on the types of choices, uh, we can update the choices parallelly, at least in node-based case. Like, yeah, in both node-based and path-based formulations, we can update the choices very efficiently. Um, if we have these types of choices, the types of choices that satisfy this form, and if we can have this kind of complementarity formulation, we can do the update step very fast. So that is true for user equilibrium, system autonom, and multinomial stochastic user equilibrium problem. Okay, so okay, so sorry, I think there are a couple of lines are repeated here, but yeah. Okay, so another problem with path-based models is that, especially in stochastic user equilibrium setting, a problem. If we use path-based models, there could be correlations, right? So like presumably, a lot of paths would have, a common intersection of these links. So that results in correlations of these noises for all of those paths. So what is done in literature is to use some deterministic correction terms. So by deterministic, I mean they are independent of demand and congestion level in the network. They are just calculated by looking at the network and looking at the paths. So obviously it is a simple approach. It seems to be, obviously it's very efficient. We can just add a correction term to the cost and we follow the same, we follow the same thing that we are doing with user equilibrium problem. But yeah, maybe we are not, the solution we get is may not be very accurate. So with node-based models, we can avoid that. We can represent the correlations. But the problem is we'll have cycles. Like we'll have unreasonable paths. Unreasonable in the sense a user can go from point A to point B and then forget, because of the Markovian assumption, they can forget that they have just come from point A and they'll go back to point A. So that happens with node-based models in stochastic user input problem. So to avoid that, as I said before, we use this notion of efficient links. We delete some links, but deleting some links without looking at the actual congestion level and demand, that might eliminate a lot of valid paths. So that's why I'm looking at the stochastic user input problem uh, that can dynamically figure out these efficient links. So by controlling this instability that comes from removing links entirely. So yeah. Okay. So finally, the perceived cost, uh, like from a user's perspective, N represents the user, I represents the different factors that we are considering. One factor is travel time. Another factor could be, variability in travel time. So beta is the coefficient. So the differences in users, like the population characteristics, comes into picture with betas. So we can have uh, for different classes, we can have different coefficient values, beta coefficient values. Um, for determining the variability of the travel time, we can do the simulation multiple times and uh, look at how the travel times are varying. And epsilon represents the noise term, perception noise. So this epsilon for a path, we could say it is a simple sum of noise terms corresponding to each link. So in that case, yeah, we have these correlations for different paths. So I've actually looked at if we can incorporate correlations between these noises just to check. But it seems like that would again give us this exponential increase in computational cost, because the reason it becomes exponential both here in terms of this correlations across this link noises corresponding to links and population characteristics, is because we would need to enumerate paths. So that's what this figure kind of represents. So this is a simple network. um, this where I'm looking at, I just simulated this by considering three factors. One factor could be cost, sorry, one factor is could be travel time variability, and toll cost. So for three factors, we have a two-dimensional this distribution. So like 1 degree of freedom is lost if we divide this beta by one of them. So yeah, I'm ignoring the perception noise for this simulation. No perception noise, so no epsilon. Three factors. So the two coefficients of those factors are distributed like this. So this is a simple network from 1 to 2. We have the full population distribution, and at 2, a decision is made by some users to choose 2 to 3 link, and a few users choose 2 to 4 link. But even though they are making a single decision, you can see the figure, it is split by two lines, right? So it is split by two lines because they're looking forward. They're making decision not just based on the current location. They are making decisions based on possibilities in the future. So basically, they are enumerating paths. So since this is a simple example, I can do that enumeration. But more complicated networks, it would be hard to do that enumeration. So Okay, so I think the figure on 3 to 5 and 4 to 5, they need to be the other way around. So yeah, sorry about that, but yeah. So yeah, basically 1 to 2 we have full population. Split is happening at 2, and 3 to 5 at 3. Part of the users that have chosen this 2 to 3 link go to 4, and then they get together with those who have chosen 2 to 4 and move to 5. As I said, the figure is wrong here. From 3 to 5 to 4 to 5 need to be other way around. And finally they reached node 5, and all the demand has reached the destination. So yeah, a couple of references. So yeah, any questions? Yeah. So like, yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like in my work, I mainly focused on the stochastic user equivalent problem, uh, and I'm trying to determine the efficient links dynamically. So change the set of links from one iteration to the next. So the idea is, it's okay if we have cycles in the middle iterations. All we need is a solution at the end that doesn't have cycles. So that's using that I'm kind of trying to control that instability that comes from removing and adding links uh, from one iteration to the next. So yeah, in the similarly in public transit, I'm looking at a network design problem where this assignment model is a component. So yeah.
I have one question, but I mean, I'm this is not my area of expertise.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe my question is too naive, but yeah, but I will make it
No.
anyway. So my, are you familiar with the I don't know if you can call them like commercial packages, or the the common lines approach for the transit assignment model
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is used in this strategic transportation models for the public transportation assignment. Are you familiar with
Yeah.
that? And what is your opinion on what is the gap, or what you're losing when you're using that let's call it like aggregated approach, or non-dynamic approach versus the efforts you are trying in this dynamic approach to the problem, which is obviously is more sophisticated and realistic. But what do you think are the key advantages of moving forward to in that direction?
Yeah, yeah. So, firstly, I thought of mentioning that. I thought of putting the term common lines here because this is a common lines approach, like uh, choosing a subset of lines, right? So, which are among those lines, which are one arrives first, we board that line. So, yeah, that gives us this computational complexity. So, in terms of this aggregation, firstly, as I said, there are first of all there are different. We're incorporating this notion of aggregations are different elements, right? From the population's perspective, like in at least in my work, I'm not considering any sort of population characteristics. Maybe later on, I can add some, their value of time or whatever, but at this point I'm not. So we're losing detail here, the population characteristics. That is one thing. And secondly, in the transit context, I'm working on a static model. And in the traffic context, I'm working on a dynamic model. So with a static model, the assumption that we make is with regards to the headways, right? Headways of the vehicle. Like basically it's the assumption we make is it is totally random. The headways are totally random. Like we assume this Poisson distribution. So it doesn't matter uh, it has this memory list property, right? Exponential distribution. So it doesn't matter when we reach the station, uh, the expected waiting time does not vary. But that may not be the case if we have some fixed schedule. So in that case, we may try to fix the schedule such that, for example, the transfer times is minimized. Like, for example, if we know that a lot of people traveling on this line get down at this point and board this different line, if that is happening, maybe we fix the schedules such that at this transfer stop, the two lines are closer. The waiting time is minimized for the transfer passengers. But that cannot be incorporated in static model because we are assuming this Poisson distribution for the headways, which is totally random. So yeah, in a dynamic model, we can add that. So maybe that is strictly not an aggregation related difference, but that is a level of detail that is missed there. So mainly what we are missing is the population characteristic differences. I hope that answers the question. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hello, I have a question. I'm sorry I arrived very late. I didn't know about this presentation, but I have a doubt. Have you evaluate or work with the transfer penalties in a transit assignment model, or have you evaluate something like that?
Yeah. We can incorporate transfer penalties. Like I haven't put the work here, but what I'm doing is like in this presentation, the reason I haven't put it is I wanted to mainly focus on comparing these two, road traffic and public transit. So if we got into the details there, maybe I didn't have enough time. So that's why I haven't put the details. But what I did was in the transit work was to kind of separate the decision choices, right? As I said, there are two types of choices in road transit. One is the boarding choice and alighting choice, right? With the boarding choice we have the strategies, and alighting choice we can make near the stop. So I basically defined these different types of nodes and links, like arrival node, departure node, and so on. There's some of the previous works have done that, but I think I have added a small element, minor element, a strategy node to that. But what happens with the separation of the network, this basically expansion of the network, is that we can separate out the choices, first of all, and it allows this aggregation. And secondly, we can add different types of costs. Like one is penalty cost, another
Yeah.
is within a travel link we could look at the level of comfort for the passengers depending on the density and waiting times, and we can incorporate all these different types of costs by that. So yeah, we can add that. Yeah.
How do you find attractive arcs or nodes for?
So basically, like they like one simple way, naive way, is to look at full strategies, like all the strategies, which is all
On
the
net?
possible. Yeah.
Okay,
If
but
we do that, yeah, tell
yeah,
me.
but in the case of Santiago, for example, we have a very dense network, so
Yeah.
it is it is impossible because you have a
Yeah.
lot of alternatives to assign.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So yeah, that is true. Like if there are like 6 lines available from a stop, then we would have 2 power 6 minus 1, which is like 63 or something. Yeah, 63 possible strategies that they can choose from. So what I am doing is trying to look at this static traffic assignment literature, right? What they have done, they generate paths. So why don't we generate paths here? So we generate path, assign, and so we can avoid that exponentiation. So it is true that is the major source of computational complexity. But it is a bit surprising, even in the literature. Like if we look at traffic assignment literature, static assignment literature is very matured already because there are so many of these models. But transit assignment, uh, it is also, there are a large amount of literature, but still, even now papers are coming in static traffic transit assignment that are very state of the art. So it was interesting. So well, yeah, I think we can incorporate like these. We can look at the differences in traffic, road traffic and public transit, look at the literature and see how we can adapt to this context. So one way to do that is this generating paths thing. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. So yeah, I'll stop sharing the presentation. Great.
Okay, so that's it. So yeah, so if there are no more questions, then
Yeah.
Then so thank you very much, Sai, for your presentation and welcome to Chile. I mean, I had the opportunity to meet you by chance. I mean, like in person. So I was glad to do that. It's sad that we were not able to share like more opportunities. I mean, to know all the people here, but hopefully next year the COVID is better and we can all meet and share the research ideas and just chat during the days to see very interesting work and I hope you make great advances in your while you are in Chile. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thanks for giving me this opportunity. And yeah, I just wish. I mean, I really miss working at our office and people. So I just hope everything gets back to normal soon. And yeah. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity and thanks for attending the presentation.
Okay. Okay, so
Okay. See you.
bye-bye.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.